When we think of Iceland, images of breathtaking landscapes, simmering geysers, and peaceful quiet often fill our minds. But beneath its serenity, there exists a tale harrowing enough to leave even the bravest trembling. Tonight, let's traverse into the shadows of history to uncover the story of the Spectre on the Icelandic moorlands. Welcome to the Nightside archive. In the early 1700s, a peculiar and eerie set of events began to disturb the tranquility of the Icelandic highlands. The region, desolate and windswept, was home to moors that stretched over miles, vast plains of gravel and moss, creating a backdrop that felt eternally trapped between reality and myth. Locals whispered about an entity stalking the moors, something neither man nor beast. Here lies the tale of Gunar Olafson, a young shepherd, and the spectral presence that marked the course of his life. Gunar was just 22 years old, known in his village for his mild manner and impeccable work ethic. When most avoided the moors during harsh winter months, Gunar willingly guided his flock through the rugged terrain. The moorland was treacherous, but his livelihood depended on braving its dangers. One dreary December night, as Gunar herded his sheep back after a storm, he noticed something out of the ordinary. A figure shimmered in the distance, silhouetted against the howling winds and the swirling snow. Initially dismissing it as a trick of light, Gunar ignored it. But the figure didn't vanish. It began to edge closer. This figure was unlike anything Gunar had seen. Cloaked in a robe of inky black fabric that seemed to absorb the light around it, the entity moved with an unsettling glide, almost hovering. Its face, if it had one, was hidden in an abyss of shadows beneath its hood. Still, Gunar felt as if unseen eyes were burrowing into his very soul. A bone-chilling dread crept up his spine. The moorlands weren't known for superstition like other regions of Europe, but encountering such a ghostly figure amidst the lifeless terrain unsettled even someone as pragmatic as Gunar. The figure didn't speak, nor did it show intent to harm, but Gunar couldn't shake the overwhelming sense of doom its presence left behind. The next morning he found some of his sheep missing, vanished without a trace, as though swallowed by the moor itself. Over the following weeks, the sightings grew more frequent. Villagers soon advised Gunar to abandon his work on the moors. Despite their warnings, he insisted on keeping his rounds, driven by duty and the need to support his family. So, Gunar sought answers instead. Elderly villagers spoke of an old tale, a woman accused of witchcraft in the area during the 1400s. She had been executed on the very same moors Gunar trod. Her name was Haida, Gret's daughter. They said her spirit, burdened by a wrongful death, haunted those lands, targeting shepherds who dared tread on her final resting place. According to the legends, Haida was no ordinary spirit. She wasn't the mournful, wailing ghost so commonly told in stories. No, Haida's presence heralded misfortune, death, or perhaps the beckoning of individuals beyond the veil of life itself. Her manifesting as the cloaked figure soon became entrenched in Icelandic folklore, blending history with terrifying myth. Gunar's experiences, however, weren't just tales to him. He began noticing strange markings etched into the snow near where he'd seen the spectre. They resembled runes, but their meaning was lost to time. His sheep grew more disoriented, often wandering into dangerous zones. Sometimes he'd return home with significantly fewer animals than he had started with, further escalating his fear and the curiosity of the villagers. One dark evening nearing the end of February, Gunar's fate took a grim turn. Encounters with the figure intensified. The nights became eerily silent whenever Gunar ventured out onto the moor. the usual cries of birds and winds falling into unnatural stillness. On this night, the figure came closer than it ever had before, close enough for Gunnar to almost touch the hem of its black robe. They say Gunnar dared to ask a question, an act both bold and foolish. "Why do you do this? Why not let me be?" An answer came, not in spoken words, but as a soundless, weighty presence in his mind. Visions danced through his head, images of the moor from centuries past, of Haida's trial burning vividly bright. The spectre conveyed sorrow and vengeance. It seemed to be explaining. It wasn't Gunnar's survival it sought, but reclamation of her story, of the truth. When morning came, Gunnar was found by another shepherd who had gone searching for him. He was alive, but forever changed, muttering incoherently about suffering and justice. His hair had turned white overnight. His once youthful vigor vanished. He abandoned the moors entirely and disappeared from all mention in the local records. Yet that wasn't the end of the spectre. Other shepherds came forward with similar sightings, always cloaked figures appearing on stormy nights, sometimes nowhere near Gunnar's grazing grounds. The moors earned their reputation as a place of inexplicable sorrow. To this day, hikers and locals report mysterious occurrences, a shift in temperature, erratic compass readings, or an overwhelming sense of dread. There's even photographic evidence stemming from the late 20th century, blurry images capturing dark, human-like silhouettes standing on the otherwise barren expanse. What Gunnar experienced over 300 years ago remains an enigma that refuses to fade with time. Whether it was the guilty spirit of Haida Grettisdottir, seeking retribution against those who disrespected her resting place, is a matter of belief. But for those who've trekked through Iceland's brooding moorlands and seen unnatural movements in their peripheral vision, well, they might argue there's something undeniably, chillingly alive out there. Should you wander across those plains, keep your eyes open and your wits sharp. For some stories, as Gunnar learned, are not just tales, they are warnings. Thank you for joining us on this harrowing journey through Iceland's spectral moors. This has been the Nightside Archive, and until our next tale, stay vigilant of the shadows that may lurk just out of sight.